Jerusalem, 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 Jerusalem. We wanna go back home, go back where we belong. Forgive us for our wrong. I pray this reach the throne. Jerusalem, Jerusalem.
So this is part 2 of our trip to Israel, and this is going to start with our second day that we were in Jerusalem. And so when we woke up that morning, I think is when we had decided that we were going to go to where the garden tomb was. I think that was the idea. We were going to start with Jeremiah's grotto and then go to where the garden tomb was and kind of just, work our way around according to the map that we now had. And I should tell you that when we got to that hotel, that I think it was that first morning before we did the tour of the old city, that the owner of the hotel or the manager of the hotel was so shocked that we didn't have a tour guide. So he was trying to, give us some things, like some pointers or things that we should see. So the second day, when we were decided to tour the outside of the old city, is when we wanted to hit some of the other places. And so we started out by trying to find Jeremiah's grotto. And interestingly enough, we could not find it. It was so weird. We tried to kind of trace back our steps to where we had seen it, when we were making our way to the hotel. And it was the weirdest thing. We got so turned around. It was so weird. So I think what ended up happening as we were walking, then we saw the garden tomb. So we were like, okay, well, at least we can, do the garden tomb. And so when we were walking to where the garden tomb entrance was, there was a guy that was walking out of that entrance. It was like an alley area, and the guy was walking out and he said, oh, by the way, it's closed. And so we were like, crap. So now here we are. We were, lost for the longest time trying to find where this place was. And now we're trying to do the garden tomb and, it's closed. And so what we decided to do was go ahead and get lunch. And then we would, when it opened again, I think that he said it opened at 2?
2 o'clock.
I think it was 2 o'clock that he said it was open again. And so that's when we decided we would, eat lunch and then go over there. And so we had found a hotel. Well, actually it was a hotel restaurant called Jerusalem Hotel. And so we went there, and it has a historical background in and of itself. I think they had some ruins there, some beautiful kind of mosaic and pottery and all kinds of things that were there at the hotel from, ancient times, old
Byzantine area.
Byzantine, maybe yes, in the Byzantine area, definitely the Roman era as well. And so we were able to have lunch. And when we were there having lunch was when I had spoken to, I think it was the server that kind of gave a little bit of the history. She kind of talked a little bit about the hotel and the history of the family that owns it and all of that. It's an Arabic family, or Palestinian. I don't know, Palestinian or Arabic. I'm not sure which it was. But anyway, it was an establishment that is known. A lot of people go there when they're doing their tours of Israel. And so when I told her that we were trying to see, certain places, she had brought over, I think he was the owner, right? He was the owner of the hotel and the restaurant. And so he literally sat down. First of all, they gave us a map, because I think for the longest time I was using the map from what I had pulled up on my phone. So I was using my phone to kind of do a tour of the old city. But they actually gave us, finally, we found a map. It was the weirdest thing, because when we were in Old Jerusalem, nobody was selling maps. I don't know why nobody was selling any maps. I don't know if it's that because they reserve it for the tour guides. And so because they didn't want people to just go and do it on their own. Maybe they, don't sell them. And so you need to get it from a tour guide. I don't know what it is, but nobody had one. Nobody was selling them when we were in the old city. So it was finally when we were at that hotel that I was able to get a map of Jerusalem and use it to kind of go to some of where the key places were that we needed to explore and see. And so after we finished our lunch, and it was delicious. I had a good meal. I think anyway, so I had a good meal. But so once we were able to finish our meal, we then went to where the garden tomb was, and I would say that the first thing that we saw when we got inside was they took us to an area where you're sitting down on these kind of like
benches,
these benches where it's almost like theater style kind of like benches. And so we sat down in the benches, and there was a guy that was kind of giving an overview of the garden tomb and, you know, what do you expect and see and all of that. And I couldn't help but just look behind him, because behind him
was Jeremiah's
grotto. And you could see the whole kind of layout of the cave, and it wasn't like a deep cave that you could see inside of, but you could see where the cave was, and you could see that. And the lower part, when I think that was the area where Ron Wyatt had talked about going inside the cave. Trash is just trash all over it. And I remember him talking about trash being there when he first was excavating that area with his sons.
Right.
Well, it was trash there. You saw like shopping carts, and then we even saw an area where they had the concrete.
Yeah, where he explained about they closed up the area.
Yes.
After those 6 supposedly Levites.
Yeah.
That they went into the area and died.
Right. So
and he had to help to pull them out.
Yeah. So we saw like the area where more than likely he had entered. Now, one thing I want to back up and just say, one of the reasons why Jeremiah's grotto is also important, not only because of what's hidden inside of it, but that is also called Golgatha, or the Skull Hill, which is Calvary. So that was actually where Jesus was crucified. So there you could see on the top of the hill was where they had the crosses.
The crosses, yeah.
And so then Jeremiah's grave is like, Jeremiah's grotto was right, you know, on the sided hill that you can see. And then on the other side, isn't it the other side of it? Is the garden tomb. So literally, Jesus was buried in the same place where he was crucified.
Right, in the same area.
In the same area where he was crucified. That was where Joseph of Arimathea had, as a rich man, purchased that tomb area that was all carved out so that he could be buried. And that's where he, you know, laid Jesus, his body.
And the interesting thing about the grotto and the name of the place, Golgatha, means a skull.
The skull.
And it actually looks like the form of a head with as a skull.
It looks like a skull. So you can literally see why they called it the Hill of the Skull. Yeah. Yes, you could definitely see why they called it that. And so after he kind of gave us an overview of the garden tomb, and so then we walked over to where the garden tomb actually is. And he kind of showed a diagram of how it was separated out into like 3 parts. And so I think what he was saying was where Jesus was laid to rest was on the farthest inner part. And the reason why he said that is because when it describes in the Bible that the disciples had peered in, they bent down and they peered into the tomb, the only area they would have seen was that farthest part inside of the tomb, which would have been where his body was laid. And so I'm showing a picture where you can see what it looks like inside of the tomb itself. And on the outside of it, you can literally see where when the big stone was rolled in front of the entrance, you can see where the soldiers would have put the seal to keep the stone from being moved. Because remember, the Pharisees were afraid that the disciples would have taken his body at night, and then, you know, his death would have been a bigger thing than his life. Of course it was anyway, but they were trying to prevent him from his body from being stolen, because they still didn't accept him as the Son of God. So it was just really fascinating to be able to go and see where Jesus' body was laid and where he was resurrected from.
Right.
It was absolutely amazing. It was,
and we actually got to step inside.
and we got to go inside and see it, firsthand for ourselves as well, which was, it is, again, it's like one of those things where words cannot describe the feeling of actually seeing it for yourself. It was just amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So then after we did the tour of the garden tomb, and we, took some pictures around the area and met some people too, because didn't we have a chance to talk with some people that were also kind of doing a tour at the same time with us.
That's where you met Israel.
That's where I met Israel, and that's where you met that lady who you were able to share some information about who we are and all of that as well. So it was divinely ordained the way everything worked out. And so from there was when we were told, so when we were still at the Jerusalem hotel, the owner had said, well, what you can do is just take a bus. He told us where we could have caught the bus from at the bus terminal area. And he said you could just take a bus and take it all the way to the top of the Mount of Olives Hill and then work your way down to, the Church of Ascension and some of the other places that, are important and pertinent to see. And then, you kind of make your way back to the city where we were staying. So that was what the plan was, right? So the plan was we were going to take the bus all the way to the top and get a beautiful vista of the old city of Jerusalem. I think it was from there that we were able to see the Temple Mount with the golden dome and a nice view of the city. I mean, you literally are able to see a beautiful vista of the entire city of the old city of Jerusalem. Is absolutely beautiful. And actually all the outskirts. I mean, it's just, you've got to see everything there. And from that view is, I think it was a 7 hotel or something like that. What was it called? It was a hotel that was at the top there. I don't remember exactly the name of the hotel, but there was a hotel that was at the top there that you can get that beautiful view. So you can get the view from the sunset. You can get the view if you want to see, what the whole area looks like. It's just the best place to go to get a lovely view of the city. And so that's where we got off, and we got to, get that kind of like experience to just kind of take it all in. And then our plan again was to work our way down. Now, mind you, it was kind of hot. It was very hot. It was hot. And so walking up a hill, it was hot. And so I think as we were walking up the hill, we were like, man, is this the right place? Because if it's not the right place and we're walking up this hill and we're going in the wrong direction, this is not going to be good. So while we were walking, we first came upon this sign that said the Tomb of the Prophets. And I remember seeing that on the map, and I was like, that would be interesting to see. I didn't know, much about it, but I thought it would have been interesting to see. So we were like, okay, well, we're here. Might as well go down and get this experience. And so we went down and we saw the entrance of what looks like a cave or cutout area in, underground. And it was locked. There was a gate in front of it and it was locked. And so I saw a young man that was outside, and he came up and he said, oh, did you guys want to go to the Tomb of the Prophets? And I was like, yeah, but I don't know. It looks like it's locked or whatever. So he said, no. So he went and he called the guy who I guess is the supervisor, the manager of it. Mm-hmm. And so he then came and he gave us this tour of that whole entombed area. I mean, the where the tombs are. And it was amazing. So I want to play this video so that you can hear him as he's describing, the prophets the prophets and their disciples that were buried there. It was Malachi, Haggai, and Zechariah. Haggai, Malachi, and Zechariah, and their disciples that were buried there. And it was instrumental in where they were buried, because I think they were saying that, I don't know, was it biblical or was it somewhere in the Bible that they had said that they wanted to be risen from the Mount of Olives. So that would be when the second coming of Jesus here, which is we feel imminent, when it happens that they would be resurrected from there. And so it just the whole thing, as he kind of walked through and he explained the whole layout and what was happening and all of that there is just amazing. So take a look at the video.
Haggai, Malachi, Zechariah.
Right.
So we come down the steps. We are standing here. Two
Right.
circles in the cave. The first circle contains the tombs around. The second circle, a corridor to pray. Altogether in the cave, 50 tombs.
Wow.
The last three prophets, Haggai, Malachi, Zechariah, and their followers. Haggai, Malachi buried in the center. Half circle there, the followers of Haggai and Malachi. And the other half, Zechariah, his followers. Now, why these prophets buried on Mount of Olives? It's the prophecy of Zechariah chapter 14. The Messiah will come from heavens to Mount of Olives, and the resurrection from the Mount of Olives to the Temple Mount. Hallelujah. That's why they are buried here, to be the first who's going to be resurrected.
Wow.
That's why the Jews use the whole Mount of Olives cemetery, because all waiting for the Messiah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's walk and show you what we talk about.
Okay.
Please. Ma'am, are you okay? Or take you my hand?
Yes,
Please.
thank you.
Please. Catch me well. Yeah.
All right.
Now, this is the first circle.
Oh, okay.
And at the right side, this is the tombs, one by one. And all these tombs for the disciples of Haggai and Malachi. Now I will show you one of these tombs so you can have an idea how they bury, how the graves look. Now take a look at this grave here. Now each grave, come closer. Yeah. Each grave 1 meter deep by 2 meters long. And the graves have a step from the left side and the right side because Muslims, they don't use coffin, wooden box, and Jewish. They just wrap the body with the white sheet, lay him down between the two ledges. Then they put flat stones on top and seal it, and it becomes a box into the rock. Then they cover it with the soil level with the floor. That's how they bury.
I see.
Yeah. Now, this one here is the inner circle for prayer. This one
This one.
and there. So
Both-
one circle.
both
No,
sides.
that's the big circle with the tubes.
Oh, okay.
So, what do we mean by prayer? This is on the right side here, a table. And if you look at the top, it's cut like half a chapel.
Oh, yeah.
So here they bring the dead body, they make the prayer for the body, then they bury him in the tomb, like the funeral service.
I see.
Yes. So the inner circle, prayer circle. We will go there
This is
later.
another one.
It's one circle, but the main corridor divides the cave to two halves. That's one circle, one circle.
I see.
Now, over here, the big circle. Now, if you look at the left side here, like what we saw there, the graves of the disciples of Zechariah. And here, Zechariah tomb. This one.
This one.
Now, how do we know this one? First, it is cut square from the top. The others cut round.
Oh.
And this is the only grave have a description in Hebrew on top here. This one.
I see.
Yeah, Zechariah. Now, inside you will see some papers. This is prayers. Jews come to
Oh,
pray
I
like
was
the Western world.
wondering. Yes.
Now, we are talking about Zechariah, the prophet from the Old Testament.
Of the right.
Zechariah the priest, the husband of Elizabeth, or the father of Johannes, down in the Kidron Valley from the New Testament time.
Right.
So this is the prophet from the Old Testament time. Would you like to have a picture for you? I take one for you here.
That would be awesome.
Oh.
So after our tour of the Tomb of the Prophets, we then again started working our way back up. It was literally up a hill to get to the point where we got to the Church of Ascension and kind of work our way down. And as we were walking, I think I had asked, I don't know if I had asked a question to a guy that was driving by, because we wanted to make sure we were going in the right direction. And the guy, I think he had said that it was that way, or he was saying somewhere else. And as he was talking to us, this taxi cab came up, and he was very pushy, very pushy.
Really aggressive.
Very pushy and aggressive, and had basically said that the place where we wanted to go in the Garden of Gethsemane, that it was going to be closed soon. And so we were hurrying to, he was hurrying us, I should say, that, oh, you need to hurry up and go, because it's getting ready to close. No, it wasn't. It was not about to close. So anyway, we ended up going down, which meant that we missed the whole kind of tour down the hill, and we ended up driving down there. And then he tried to, say how he can take us around to different places. He was trying to, make some money off of us. And, I just didn't like his attitude. I thought he was just too pushy and obnoxious. And so we parted ways. And then we went into the Garden of Gethsemane, which also had a church in there. But you got to see where the whole layout of the garden is, which was absolutely, it was lovely. I liked the way they kept the grounds and everything. And you saw some really old olive trees.
Right.
Really old olive trees.
And despite the age of them, they were still in fruit.
Yeah, they still were producing
and
olives.
I understand they're hundreds or thousands of years old.
Yeah, so that was really interesting to see and experience. And so, we had a tour of the Garden of Gethsemane, and then right across from where that Garden of Gethsemane was is another garden where they said Judas actually had come with the guards to arrest Jesus. And so we were able to see both of those gardens, like that whole area. If you could just imagine, it's, there wasn't a street in between. It was like all probably one. And so we were able to see that as well. And it was amazing. And it was there that we met Abraham, right? So when we were walking down, and I was still irritated about the experience we just had with the taxi cab driver. And as we were walking, there was a young man, right?
I saw a young man come from around where we had left, from the Garden of Gethsemane. And because we were so unhappy about being dumped there, the taxi driver, he didn't even take any money.
No.
Because we were so disappointed.
Yes.
And he left. And we know that we needed a taxi to get back to where we originally wanted to do the exploration down the hill. And so this young man came up. He must have been about 16?
Yeah, 15, 16 probably. Yeah.
And there was another young man with him, and they had a van. And he was asking, anybody wants a taxi? Because I had just said, we need to get a taxi to go back to where we needed to be. And they offered to take us. I was so disgruntled about the whole thing that I wasn't about to be taken again. And I don't know what started the conversation, but I asked him if he was a believer, if he knew and was aware of who Jesus Christ is and about his connection with him. And he shared with me that, oh yes, my father studies, but I said, do you read your Bible and know who he is for yourself? And so when he found out we were from the United States, he wanted to hear more. Because everybody that we met is interested in coming to the United States for a piece of that pie that everybody talks about. So we got into deeper talk, and one thing led to the other, and Keisha began talking with the other young man,
the older
and he realized how unhappy and disgruntled we were, so they offered to take us to the pool of Siloam. that would have been, and they wouldn't charge us anything.
Yeah, that was like the entry, because I think the plan was really the next day to take us on a nice tour around,
Right.
and you know,
But
and
right
they wanted to
there and
show
then-
us some things
Yeah,
there before
so
that.
Yeah.
And before we decided what we were going to do, that area where we were talking to them was where the tomb of Mary was.
Right.
So we were able, so it was at that lower part of the, you know, kind of the hill that you would go up to see all the other, you know, kind of major, you know, points of interest. And so, yeah, so we were talking. I was very kind of irritated still, and I don't know why we ended up deciding to
Go with them.
And
Because
normally,
they were so insistent about showing us the pool of Siloam.
yes, that's
They
true.
knew exactly where it was.
Yeah.
And they knew where it was, but in general, it's not a place that the public go to.
Right.
Because it's a very difficult downhill and steep pathway. I don't even know how they made it down there without an accident or anything. Cars are parked on either side. Cars are approaching you and there's nowhere to go. And so it was one of the places that the Most High wanted us to see as well and to connect with them, because it kind of repaired the satisfaction that we had from that taxi driver. And they were so devoted and helpful to us and showed us things that we would not have seen.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that they had shared with us when they were talking about taking us around, that they would take us to places that are not on the normal kind of tourist
area.
trek. You know, they
Right.
would take us to places that most people are not even aware of.
And that is deeper into the Palestinian
Yeah,
side
exactly.
of that area of Jerusalem. And so we went to the pool of Siloam. And,
So we drove, and it was narrow streets.
very
Remember?
narrow.
Oh my goodness,
There
it was very
nowhere for
narrow.
two people to
It was
cross
very
each other.
narrow streets that you had the cars parked in all the sides. Anyway, so we got to the pool of Siloam, and so actually there was two sides to it. There was one side that I think had dried up. And then there was this other side where, you know, you had to go down the steps to where the water was. And it actually was interesting because when you went down, and if you were walking around the corner of it, you could actually see where there is a tunnel that leads right into the old city of Jerusalem. And so that was one of the things that he had shared and showed us, showed me, because I was the one that had gone down there. That was really, really interesting. So,
and the pool of Siloam is where Christ healed the blind man.
exactly. So after we had a tour of the pool of Siloam, we then went to where the spring is actually fed, right? So that was when we had gone to the Gihon spring. So actually, when Solomon was anointed king in the spring of Gihon, was what was that? It was found in 1 Kings chapter 1 verses 38 and 39, and that was when Zadok the priest took a horn of oil and anointed Solomon, when as opposed to when it was his brother Adonijah tried to, you know, anoint himself as king. So that was how David was able to deal with that. So anyway, so once we were at Gihon, when we were talking to the two young men, and they were basically saying to us that they wanted to invite us to their house to see what a Palestinian house was like, and get the warm hospitality of, you know, that Palestinian hospitality, essentially. And so we went to their house, and while we were in that area, they were pointing out other areas that were of point of interest. Like they had showed us where David was in the cave and had looked down and saw where Bathsheba was taking a bath on the roof of her house. So we got to see where that was. We also were able to see where Solomon's concubines, like his wives and his concubines. Some of the tombs were, they have caves where they were buried. So we saw some of those. And then there were some other kind of like older ruins of the old city that was in that outside area. And I know that they were doing a lot of archaeological digs where they would find different potteries and old lanterns and some of the currency, the coins that they had from, back in that time. And so from there, we were able to go to the house of Abraham. It was Abraham's house. And while we were there, we met his family. They were so wonderful. They were so warm and welcoming. His father sat down and chatted with us. They provided us some tea, I think it was. So we had some tea there. And we were just sitting down and chatting. And we were kind of, talking about some of the places that we wanted to see and learning about some of the history. And he shared some, really interesting stories with us. It was just...
Come to find out he was an archaeologist himself.
Yes, it was so interesting how things worked out. So again, I would say that, sometimes when you think that things didn't go quite the way you would have wanted or the way you would have expected, it's amazing how God really has turned it and is perfectly in the plan that he had laid out. Because the whole way that we met the two young men, Asa and Abraham, it wasn't planned. We didn't know that they were going to be able to be the ones really to take us to the different places that were of interest. We had no idea the role that they were going to play. But it's just amazing how God used every person that we encountered in different places along our journey for a reason. Mm-hmm. So, they took us around. So after we, had tea, then we, went out again and we had a tour of more of the outskirts of the city. We got to see, because, Jerusalem has different, like, how would you say, different religious quarters. So it's like different quarters. So you have the Muslim quarter, you have a Jewish quarter, you have a Christian quarter, you have the Armenian quarter, you have the Russian quarter. You just have different quarters within the city. It's particularly in the older part of the city, but also on the outskirts. And so, we were able to kind of go drive around and see the different areas that were kind of sectioned out that way. We were able to see the valley, I guess, I don't know if you would call it the Valley of the Kings, but it's like where they have the tombs, which is right underneath of that cemetery on the Mount of Olives. So there's a bunch of tombs that is there. There's the tomb for Zedekiah. There's a tomb for Absalom. There are some other notable people that old tombs that you'll see there. Even Bathsheba, I think her tomb was there as well. Yeah. And then we were able to go to where you could see the layout of the desert of Judea, and you could see off in the distance where Herod's palace was, where he had a beautiful view of all of the city and all of the plain area. And then what else did we see?
Well, much further in the distance, they pointed out where the Dead Sea was.
The Dead Sea was, yeah. So we did see that one as well. And then we went back to the Mount of Olives and was able to get a beautiful view and panorama of the sunset on beautiful. The Mount of, so the scenery on the Mount of Olives. It was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And then after that, after we got a nice, beautiful tour of the city, then because we were hungry, and so they were like, because we were asking initially about a restaurant or something that we could go to that, had decent food. And so that was when I think Abraham Ace was the one. Yeah. So they were like, we'll just go back to Abraham's house. And I think we were like, well, we don't want to, impose or anything like that. But they were like, no, it's not going to be a problem. So they took us back to Abraham's house. Mm-hmm. So they prepared a lovely dish that we could eat, and it was delicious. And then we had an opportunity to talk even more. And so that was when Abraham's father, whose name was Abe, was able to kind of go more in detail about some of the history. And so we had talked about Jordan and, the history of Joshua going, as well as, well, you know what, I'll let him tell it. So I'm gonna play that little excerpt so that you can see it for yourself.
And actually, the place where Joshua stood,
When
I think the place
fight.
when the sun stood in the
still.
middle, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. I
That
remember
happens
that.
over
Yes.
there.
Oh.
You see,
Wow.
not far from Gilgal, or actually from Samuel the prophet. Shmuel and Abi.
Wow. So much
You are
history.
quite a historian.
Yes, indeed.
Well, and Abraham told me his father studies a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, you see,
It's good to know these things. It connects us in such a way with
exactly.
everything.
It
You
does.
see, like you haven't been to the Jordan River, have you?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
I told you.
Mm-hmm.
So Jordan River is the place where Yeshua was baptized.
Right.
Plus what?
The dove descended on him, and
Yeah.
the father declared who he was.
No, and that is the spot where Joshua came into the promised land. The same
It's
spot.
the same spot.
Yes.
Do you see how they coordinated things?
You see,
coordinated?
exactly
Together,
when
that is amazing.
when the river dried and let them came into Jericho.
Wow.
You see, nobody
that's
knows that, but
right.
that is the same
Same
spot.
area.
Ah.
It's just like we're seeing today when we went to the tomb. And it is in close proximity to all the different events.
Ties together.
You see, so it's the same spot. I mean,
Yes. We never knew that.
And then after that, we went back to the hotel and we prepared for our next trip that we were gonna do. We decided that we were going to then drive down to the Dead Sea area and then maybe work our way back. So, we had been debating how we were going to do it, but we decided we were going to go to the Dead Sea and then go to Dimona. And so that'll be part 3 that we'll share with you. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching so far. I hope you like and subscribe. And we are looking forward to telling you that last leg of our trip in Israel.
Jerusalem, Jerusalem, yeah. We wanna go back home, go back where we belong. Forgive us for our wrong. I pray this reach the throne. Jerusalem, city of David, Mount Zion. That's the place that the Father put his name on. Them the people that these nations got their aim on. We found out where we from, that was game on. Jerusalem, we did you so wrong. We broke the laws, he left us alone. We waking up, we wanna come home. We follow Christ, ain't casting no stone. Jerusalem, yeah. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, yeah. We wanna go back home, go back where we belong. Forgive us for our wrong. I pray this reach the throne. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, yeah. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, yeah. We wanna go back home, go back where we belong. Forgive us for our wrong. I pray this reach the throne. I put my name on Jerusalem. 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 I gave my law to 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 Jerusalem. I won't forsake you, 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 Jerusalem. Jerusalem, yeah, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, yeah. We wanna go back home, go back where we belong. Forgive us for our wrong. I pray this reach the throne. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, yeah, Jerusalem.